Hello.
Holly, there's another one of you.
What's that?
There's
There's two of me.
two different Pollys.
Oh no.
I'm not.
Having trouble on my computer. I was having trouble on my laptop. Am I still there?
It still says there's an extra Polly, but it's okay. It'll work, I think. I just want to admit that other Polly.
Shoot. I only see one of me.
What personality?
Yeah. Back really quick and make sure we've got a feed here. This isn't it. Oh, there's 8 watching. I think we're good to go. There is, yeah. Oh, did I mute it? I better make sure. Yeah, it's muted. Definitely a delay.
I can come up there too.
It's okay. I think we're ready to go.
Okay.
And Sandy, you can hear and everything?
Yes, I can hear fine.
Good. We hear you loud. Okay, let's call the meeting to order. Just a little bit late, 5:35 or so. And thank you, Technical Director, for getting that fixed for us. We're getting ready to demote you to superintendent if you didn't fix it for us. No, that's not a value judgment.
I know.
Anyway, thank you all board members for being here tonight. We only have 2 items on the agenda. And let's start out with, do we post an agenda with those 2 items?
Yes.
And which one was first? I never saw.
Just the calendar, school calendar, COVID discussion, school calendar.
Okay. I kind of like to start with the gym one. Might be easier.
We can amend the agenda, I think, or whatever.
So let's start out with the calendar one. You all seen the proposal, the survey, comments, and I think we should start out, Mr. Keeks, if you could, with just a summary of your original proposal.
Sure. So I guess the first thing that I'll say is that I think there was some question just about whether or not this was a plan that was kind of set in place and ready to go, and this was just a formal process. I want to I guess state publicly that I don't want to close schools. I do believe that being here in person is the optimal thing for kids. I'm willing to continue to do whatever it takes to have kids be in the classroom with a teacher, learning like they should. I don't want to move to online learning. We tried that last year, starting in March, and we know how miserable that can be, not only for teachers, but for parents, for the community as well. It's just a real challenge, and academically, it is not the best way to serve our kids. I also don't want COVID to exist. But I think as the board, and part of the reason why we're having this special meeting is that the board kind of considers what the future looks like without necessarily making a decision right now. We're not kind of at that point. But may abilities. With that said, the pandemic has stretched all of us. I can see it in my staff. I can see it in my kids. I can see it in the community. It has been really hard already. And I am fearful that while I continue to remain optimistic, and I think there's lots of good news on some fronts, that there are more difficult challenges ahead. And I think that the board and myself and all of us aren't doing it a service unless we consider that and plan for that. A couple of things that I do know at this point, and these are just my notes. I do know that schools can be operated safely. I think the board was very wise in their decision about how we reopened school, from masking protocols to distancing to those steps we've taken. I think it's made a difference in the course of our school operations and has continued to stay in person. I think that our students and our community are very likely safer when the kids are in school. I believe that. When they're in school, they're following stricter district protocols. I believe that slows down not only school transmission, but overall community transmission. I believe that in-person learning is vastly superior to online learning. Our kids and all kids around the country and the world suffer when learning is moved to online. From in previous years, online learning, it's really exposed that online learning isn't the same as having a heart-beating live teacher in front of you when it comes to learning. We have exceptionally strong ones here. I believe that the mental health is an important consideration as the board approaches decisions like this and planning like this. I wouldn't even say it's a decision. But being in person is good for our students' mental health. It's good for our teachers' mental health. Athletics is also good for our students' mental health and their physical health. And I do believe that we can't only look at the risk of COVID as the only potential for loss. There's a lot of difficult things that the board's been doing to manage all of these risks together. I also believe that COVID continues to be serious business. The report minutes before this board meeting is that there are now 929 people in the state of Idaho who have died in the last 8 months from the disease. In a normal year, less than 100 people die from the flu. That's a 12-month period, typically between 65 and 85. COVID, according to the CDC, is number 3 on the list of killers in Idaho, topped still by heart disease and cancer. I know that our state currently has 450 people that are hospitalized in an inpatient bed in the hospital. And over the last week, this has kind of plateaued at that number. I know that our state currently has 110 people that are hospitalized in the ICU. This is an all today. I also know that our local and regional hospitals have communicated that the growth in cases is not sustainable, given the people that end up in the hospital. I would say that we've all made sacrifices in the last 8 months. I know students, parents, teachers, administrators have all made sacrifices, and I greatly appreciate that. It feels a little bit like, I remember a poster when I was a kid in elementary school with the little orange cat. I don't know if you've seen it. It's kind of an iconic poster, and it's at the end of its rope, and it says, when you're at the end of your rope, hang on. And I think, I don't think we're at the end of our rope. I'm a very positive person. I think there's good news on the front. They're positive for the kind of return school normal eventually. But again, I do believe that these next couple of months are going to be some of the hardest to maintain school. and what we're doing. As far as the special meeting itself, and something that I just want to make the board aware of, is planning for if it becomes kind of out of this control and we're forced to move to something different than I basically see a couple of reasons why that might happen. And again, for everybody listening, I would just say that we are not at that point yet. The two reasons I can see that the school might have to shift to a different form of learning are, one, and I've said this before in previous boards, staffing. Staffing could become a real issue with an increased number of cases outside of our school. There's an increased likelihood that our staff will catch the virus either in school or out of school, honestly, the more cases that there are. If certain staff members are out for 14 days at a time or 10 days at a time, if certain staff members have health issues with the virus, there's probably 4 or 5 days this year that we have razors for substitutes. And when I say that, it's, there has to be consideration. We may be able to find a warm body to keep kids from stabbing each other in the class. But there's also the question of what is is that the best education outcome and use of our resources as well? I don't have an answer to that, and perhaps every situation is unique. But I do see that staffing at some point could become an issue with just operating a school. The second thing that I would say that has the potential to change what we're doing with in-person instruction is the hospital and the health district. And that would be if either our local hospitals or our health district, our North Central Idaho Regional Health District, comes to us and says, we think it's time to what I would call shelter in place. And I know hospitals are nervous about this. In Idaho, they have not hit that point yet, but there's a large concern that we don't have large hospitals nearby. Cottonwood, Orfino, Greenville do not have an ICU department. All of their intensive care unit patients get transferred. There's an increasing fear that there is nowhere to transfer them to. The regional hospitals that they would normally transfer patients are filling up. And there's a fear that, patients on Camas Prairie might not receive optimal health care because they're unable to be transferred to a care facility. So, yep.
This another dimension of that is staffing hospitals.
Yes.
Again, spent 2 days in the ER room waiting for because there aren't enough rooms. They just don't have the staff to the adequate staff for that. So that's going to be an issue too.
It's absolutely, staffing is one of their number one concerns, and you hate to get to the point as medical professionals that there has to be a panel, a group of people set up to make decisions about who can receive care and who can't. And like I said, we're not there yet, but the hospitals certainly have picked up in the last couple of weeks in sounding the alarm that we're on a course. Now, I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. I don't know what a week from now is going to bring. Cases could drop. I kind of doubt it, given that we've had recent holidays and some travel, but that could be the case. Nobody truly, we can make predictions, but nobody knows the course of the virus for sure. And what happens sometimes is small individual choices can eventually drive large changes, kind of unseen, as people change behavior or make different decisions. And so what I brought the board together is to have that discussion about what are the types of things the board might consider some sort of pause in in-person instruction. And then also, if there is a pause in in-person instruction, some guidance as to what's the next best step. So with that said, that's where I did the parent survey, and then I met with both the elementary and secondary buildings regarding just those exact same topics. The parent surveys, as you saw, were fairly, a large majority of parents advocated for, if there was some sort of pause to in-person instruction, that they would advocate for a continued online instruction. I guess there wasn't an infinite number of options there. There were really only two. One would be a short-term closure, and the other would be just moving to online. But about 80% of the parents responded in that way, that they would prefer to have it online. The staff members, I would say after some contemplation, was largely the same. That if we were having to pause in some form, that they would rather it be try our best to continue online instruction as well. And Polly asked me to have a staff member here too, so I'll, if at any point, if you have questions for Marietta Leach, who's here, you certainly could ask her for a staff member's perspective as well, a teacher's perspective. Again, I guess I'll just open it up. I'm not even advocating for a specific decision, but I guess the two things are, what kind of metrics should we be looking for where we might have to make a decision like that? And then secondly, if we make a decision like that, what is the best course of action? The other way, just to explain it, since everybody's here, would be right after Christmas, basically, right after the Christmas holiday, where we would shut down, assuming that cases would be at a really high level. And then with any pause like that, we'd have to make up those hours somewhere else, and those hours would be made up later in the year, either via a spring break going away or educating our kids in June. So those are kind of that was the two things that were presented. Other than that, I guess we can open it up for discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about how to do this.
Yeah.
First of all, I got to say, as a board, and I'm thinking board members all around the state are doing this, that we're ill-equipped to make recommendations on, medical, like what percentage do we hit or we do something, but I think we are better equipped to just to discuss the general considerations of, of bringing together some of the concerns our patrons had, some of the concerns we've had through the School Board Association about online learning versus a pause where you have a break in learning and that type of thing versus what we can talk about as far as the health district. So I'm going to just qualify our discussion a little bit, at least my viewpoint in that. So let's start first, I think, with considerations on, you mentioned the two considerations of a pause, and then even if it's a pause or the next step from, if we didn't pause and then had a blow up, what kind of things do we look at for going on online learning or maintaining learning in school with segregated spaces and whatever we're going to talk about there. So maybe we should start out with talking about your idea for a pause, or the plan for a pause, and what kind of ideas the board has. And then we can move to how do we determine, we're operating under our current plan right now with the different green, yellow, orange, and red zones. But then I guess the next step would, when you're talking about next steps, what kind of considerations do we add to that plan, I guess, would be what we're interested in. So I'll open it up, board members. Do you have some thoughts about, I think we should just focus on right now the plan for a pause, and then we can move from there in any direction you like, but let's start with that.
So I have a question. It kind of does kind of with Panther clause. We have our green, yellow, red, the green, yellow, orange, red deal. How were we moving between stages there before? I mean, we went from green to yellow. It was just health district asked us to.
Yeah, I would say so largely. I would say that it wasn't that the health district necessarily approached us about moving to yellow. It was a conversation between us that then led to that kind of recommendation. But largely based on the health district.
And that was kind of, I believe that was our idea behind when we approved this plan. That would be how we decide to go to orange or to red.
Yeah. One thing
With
that
health district input was,
Yeah.
because like Ken said, we're not equipped to pick a percentage of cases when we should move.
One thing that's changed a little since the beginning of it is that, while it seemed probably early on when we formed that plan that we would get clear guidance from a health district about, it's yellow now. If you look on our health district page still, Lewis County is in the green. Now, when you go to click on the metrics for Lewis County, they're all in the red or orange. But the health district itself has not made the formal decision to move Lewis County out of green. So hospitalizations are in the red, testing is in the orange, and the case rate is in the red as well. So the health district has kind of demonstrated that they're not necessarily interested in it's kind of this back and forth. Their argument is kind of like, well, the board is elected to, decide about the operation of the schools. They certainly do still communicate and consult, and I can have a conversation any day and say, where do you think we're at if we're in red? But they're not gonna come out and send me a letter and say you need to move to red. So that's changed a little. That really wasn't the way it was kind of at the beginning. That's shifted. But yes, definitely with consultation from them would drive whether we shift yellow, orange, red, etc. One thing I think we missed in the plan is that, I don't think anybody foresaw the potential of the staffing issue as being like a driving factor, where you might even still maybe not have high enough cases to close, but staffing itself makes it so that the operation of the school isn't possible. That's just another piece that's not really built into our plan anywhere. It doesn't say it. I don't know. Was there anything else, Quinn, or if I didn't answer it? Yeah.
I mean, if we reach a staffing point,
It's,
there's some other things we can do staffing wise. I mean, if we're low on staff, we could go to alternate days. There's some things we could do.
Yeah.
And still at least maintain student contact. But that's kind of a different discussion. I'm sure you've thought of
Yeah.
this.
Those alternate days, it is, I watch from my perspective and I look at my staff and I can see, I can just see it in their faces, the exhaustion. One of the things that we've done from the beginning is, we're trying to keep kids home if they're sick. And so we'll say, provide some online services while they're doing in person. That task is Herculean for the teachers. And especially when they want to do it at the same level that we've always educated kids at. It's a lot. And say, it's really hard every situation's different. If your kindergarten teacher is out and your first grade teacher's in, how do you manage that so the kindergartners come one day to the first grade teacher and then the first graders come the other day, or how do you split that? There's a lot of pieces there, and it would be moving fairly fluidly. So it's not like, one of the other things that I've heard from other schools is you don't like the jerking around, right? That's part of the issue too. Is like, oh, we're online. Oh, we're not online. Oh, and I think you saw that in the parent surveys too. Like, hold on, stay the course. We want things to stay the same. This is working right now, and I think it is. But just being able to make some of those transitions smoothly, if we have to, again, it would be the big premise there.
That's the point. We want to have that contingency plan, but like Quinn said, how do we know which percentage of staff out and students affected and community spread? And it seems like we don't know for sure what those numbers or percentage do look like.
Yeah. I'm gonna, I'll unmute, Polly. We were getting some feedback, so I muted you guys, but do either Polly or Sandy, I guess you can unmute yourself and, if you have anything else.
I couldn't hear what Carrie said.
Yeah, it was just that, yes, we want to have this plan moving forward. This makes it tricky when we don't know what those percentages are of community spread or student spread, or even, how many staff we can function well with.
Yeah,
If we go to online, but some of our staff are maybe not well enough to be teaching, it's like, what's that going to look like?
yeah. I mean, I think that that's probably the hardest part about making this decision is the staff. The students seem to be doing fine.
Right. And like I said in my piece, it does not appear that, and all the data and research says that, especially our younger students, our K through 6, are not driving spread. That doesn't bear out anywhere. I guess with the staff, my thought is you'll know it when you see it, but
Yeah.
it's hard because you want to prepare for it. But how much one of the things I struggle with, just at the top here, is like, how much do you try to make it keep going? Like, for example, if Marietta's out, do you put the first grade and the kindergarten in the gym in chairs so that you can keep meeting in person and one teacher can watch all 30 of them? Is that reasonable? Do you go and find a live body for a sub when a teacher has to be out, a certified trained teacher, and we're teaching reading to these kids? Do you just go find anybody and just say, well, just keep track of them and try and do your best to follow the teacher's lesson plans? At that point, is it worth it?
I think it's like an individual case, because if the teacher's out sick, that's could be 2 weeks, could be even 3.
Mhm.
If the teacher's out quarantined, now they've shortened that down to like 8 days.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's an individual case. But then if they're piling up, you have 2 or 3 you're dealing with.
Yeah.
That, size school our size, that becomes a real problem.
Yeah. Thus far, we've only had one teacher at a time in quarantine, and every time, I mean, it puts us close. On our first case, we lost 4 subs that otherwise had been coming in, but just that scare of a first case. Certainly having Kevin here helps with it, but he's just one person, not a bunch. And then another thing to consider is aides as well. Like we really do put them to work and they do important stuff. And again, it goes to the stress level of educating when you're pulling, essential people out from the jobs that we kind of have assigned. It certainly is exhausting, and it's exhausting for everybody, but I see that school perspective and it concerns me, but yeah.
When I considered the pause thing, the first time you told me about it, I thought, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then I just kept thinking about the numbers kind of thing. So if we're concerned about the way people handle the holidays, and I'm not going to be a transgressor, but I'm sorely tempted to, it's hard for families, but let's just say a family decides they're going to go somewhere, Tri-Cities, and they come back, they don't know, but they're 1 or 2 of their members have infected with COVID. They come back and they've got, a 4 or 5, they come back on the 1st, they've got a 4 or 5 day period. And then all of a sudden they've got some symptoms, but they infected 10 people, before they even knew. And that's the first week. So 2 weeks, then those 10 people, they're going to be a few days out. And so by the time the 21st or 23rd hits and we go back to school, they're just, all those cases are just developing.
Right.
I don't know that it's like, it feels like it's, like we would pull the trigger on that based on some statistics of where we currently are, when it really is focused towards where we could be, and it doesn't gonna do that much about where we could be. That's how it feels to me.
I think it's a good point. And I think in my reflecting after kind of talking about it, I agree with you. There's a really good argument that a 3-week pause would not, you would still be booming. I mean, this is a virus that is operated on a scale of like a weeks ahead echo. You know, the cases that we're seeing right now in the hospital are 2 weeks of goes positive tests, or a week to 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, in that range. And so there's that echo piece. And I think in a conversation with like Quinn, it's like, so what happens if you pause for 3 weeks and things are worse? Now you've paused, you've been off for 5 weeks, and you're going to restart with online, or what is the plan? And that's important things. Yeah.
Yeah, and it can, I mean, roller coaster through the whole spring, who knows what's gonna happen. I mean, I know that online's not ideal, and if we have a shortage of staff, it might be hard to do online, but I think that that's probably what we need to look at. Maybe pauses.
Some of the comments mentioned athletics, and I thought about that too.
Yeah.
So when kids are in school, like you mentioned, we're controlling the environment as much as possible. But if they're not in school, but they're coming here for practice, you know, then we're not controlling that environment except for their practice.
Yeah.
And so it could have a backwards effect of actually shortening our season rather than.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
when
so
it goes
unpredictable.
athletics, this small school, probably half the high school, junior highers are involved in athletics.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're still coming in and practicing, what does a closure do at all? Because we still got half of them commingled.
Yeah. I think it's a really good point. It might be that you have to close school, but that would be helpful guidance too, as far as like, if you ever got to a point where a school closed or a school went remote, would the board still want to have athletics and try to keep that going? I know it's very important to some people, and quite honestly, I've had conversations with patrons that are like, you know, they'll reflect a personal story that is like, that's the reason why I came to school and kept getting an education. And there is a percentage of kids that are that kid. That's their purpose, that's their reason, and they end up getting a really good benefit from it. But you know, would we in some sort of event? I kind of view the high school as just knowing this, how this virus spreads, is probably more likely to get shut down than especially the lower elementary, but all of the elementary really.
I think if we actually got to the point where we're going back to online learning based on cases either in our school or I guess in our teachers, then I mean, we're already going to be out of competition. Because it just takes, it's such a fragile deal. Basketball season
It is
way more fragile than volleyball and football seasons.
Well, it is nerve-wracking, and you watch, you know, I check the paper to see the college football scores, and like half of the sheet is canceled, postponed, canceled, postponed, canceled, canceled, canceled. It's real, and again, it's just as more cases, there's more of that risk. But
You know, have you heard anything about, so if vaccinations are available in December sometime, and like first responders will be first on the list, and hospital workers and such like that. Where do teachers fit in on
so we're in a big, teachers are in a big second tier of people who it would be delivered to. So the first tier consists of healthcare workers, period. Getting it in for doctors, nurses, respiratory therapists, those people. The second tier, and certainly there will be enough doses to cover them in Idaho with this first initial dose. They're talking about the first vaccine should be shipped being the first week of December is what they said. This is the first week of December. to all of the individual states. After the healthcare workers, which are tier 1 in the Idaho state plan, there's a big group that's tier 2. It includes senior citizens, which is a lot. It includes EMS, fire, police, and it includes teachers. Those are not tiny groups, and there won't be enough virus for all of those. So it still is yet to be seen how. The other thing is with 2 of the viruses that are the most effective, there's real challenges for keeping the virus at a cold temperature. And there's no certainty that our local hospitals are set up to handle it at this point. So you might see more of the vaccine go towards urban areas with larger, not fully urban areas, but areas with larger regional hospitals.
So our teachers might not get vaccinated till January, February.
It is likely to be in the 2nd or 3rd wave of that. You're going to get, I mean, there's a bunch of people in that tier 2 to get through. Yeah.
Other comments about the pausing kind of plan?
Is the rest of the board fairly, like, do you feel the same way? Like if we would want to be, we would not want to close school to like online instruction prior to making that next step of canceling or pausing, I wouldn't say canceling athletics, or would you just want to push both so that they would potentially happen if you got to a point where it was you had to close the school, then you're also pausing athletics?
I would be of the persuasion of if we have to close school, well, then athletics need to be done at the same time.
So it meets at the same point. Yeah.
Because I mean, that's half our high school and junior high
Makes
Yeah.
or
sense.
better.
I'm pretty sure it would be anyway.
Yeah.
I think it probably just depends what it looks like too, right? Like if we have to close school because we don't have anybody to teach, then but the students haven't seen a big spread. Maybe I didn't hear that correctly.
I think you did,
That's a good
and
point.
I think it's a good point. Yeah. You could be driven by different things. One, a huge amount of cases, and you say we got to close school. Well, certainly athletics is going to
Right.
fall at that point too. You're probably postponing games and canceling them anyways. The other possibility that we've considered is that staff becomes an issue. And if that's all it is and student cases remain low, then you may elect to, pause in-person instruction, but continue athletics and do that in a reasonable fashion.
Just look
I
like
think it's just so hard to make these decisions because you don't know what it looks like.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's kind of what this is just what are all the possible outcomes? And at least we're talking about it. And when something like that comes up, we're going to be able to look at it, and maybe not have to start from scratch on how to make
Yeah.
a decision.
Yep.
That's almost kind of where it sounds is that we don't need to take an action on this, that we have our plan in place and we go until something happens. We'll have to have another special meeting and.
Well, I think, one thing is Mr. Teeks needs to know somewhat where we're at. Because
Yeah.
if he pulls this saying, okay, we're going to do this, and then we
What the
come and
heck?
say, oh, no, we're not.
Right, absolutely,
Not a
that's
great
right.
thing.
And there's value even without a decision in me listening to you guys as elected board members, duly elected board members, to have these conversations so that it's not like Ken said on Monday, Mr. Teeks canceled school, and on Tuesday there's a special board meeting to reinstate school and discuss Mr. Teeks's contract for next year.
And that's happened.
Yeah,
around
yeah.
the state.
It's happened. And so it helps to have it, have this open discussion in public. People are listening and hearing you guys deliberate. And then it also provides me with that guidance or those ideas about what do we do with athletics? What do we do with, staff member cases, et cetera?
Kind of moving on to the next step. I'd like to ask Mrs. Leach about student learning and like a pause versus online learning. What do you think is more, what kind of positive and negatives should we consider retention wise, you know, I read some of the comments about that. And
I think, without a doubt, every teacher will tell you face-to-face is the best. Nowhere else do you put in twice as many hours to get half of the achievement
Mhm.
as we do when we have to go online. It's incredible. We are putting in double hours and getting half of the achievement. Face-to-face is best. To go online is probably better, in my opinion, than a pause. And the reason is, at least there's something out there. There's a little bit. But what you have to know is K-3 is driven by parents and parents only. I have spent 4 months trying to get kindergartners able to go independently online, and it is never going to happen. If you cannot read, you do not own your learning. Someone else has to help you. So that's where it gets really tricky going online for K-3. I saw a 50% parent buy-in. The 50% that did it, their kids held their ground. Now, they didn't overachieve. They held their ground. The 50% that didn't are 6 months behind. That's part of our stress right now in the classroom, is we have never taught this bigger range of learning in 33 years. I have kids that are 6 months behind. I have ones that held their own, and I have a few that are ahead. I spend an hour on COVID, total of the day, an hour is on COVID procedures. I do it 3 times a day. Every time those kids move, it is 10 more minutes. So, and everything I've done in 33 years went out the window, and I started over, and as every teacher has. And we go, just in the classroom. Online is double that. So my preference is always online, or in person. Online next, it's a killer. You've lost all control as a teacher. And number 3 is the pause, because then there's just nothing.
Mhm.
you really, I think, hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Thanks, Marietta. I think that's what lots of the parents were saying too in that survey, as far as staying in school and having an online.
Can I just say the tricky part is this staffing? Is that okay if I?
Yeah.
Okay. The tricky part is staffing. We have no substitutes. And out of the goodness of people's hearts, they've actually volunteered to come in and sub. But all it's going to be is glorified babysitting when a teacher is not there for that length of time. A person in the classroom buys you a day or 2. It doesn't buy you 14 days. You would have to be very, very qualified to keep children under control under these environments and actually teach something. And I don't think we have too many people that A, are that qualified, or B, really want to go in and do that. And so it gets really, really tricky if we're trying to run, if our staff goes out, that's a whole new ballgame there. Somebody asked me, well, why can't you go home and video yourself and have an adult in the classroom so your kindergartners can watch you? And I'm like, are you serious? You think they're going to sit there and do all this stuff while I'm online? I mean, there's so much more to teach. Walking closer to him, it's like, it's multiple. I can't just stand at on a camera and teach for a day. It's not going to work. Now, you have a better chance moving up the grades, a lot better. It's not going to work K-3. And I don't have an answer for that. If I go down, if first grade goes down, second or third grade goes down, I do not know what we're going to do. Those are highly specific grades that teach beginning reading. And beginning reading is the hardest thing there is to teach. Well, maybe not, but if you can't read, you can't go any further. And I don't know if we have any backup to back us up if we go down, if we have to take 2 weeks off.
I just had a nerve. This is kind of, I think it's legitimate. I think looking beyond COVID, let's just say April, May, whatever it is that we can say we're somewhat beyond COVID anyway. What are we gonna do to catch everybody up? What kind of things are we gonna have to do then? Or are you not even thinking about that yet?
You know, right now, how do I catch up? Children, half of my class. I mean, we have got kids in one-on-one instruction 4 times a day. We can't put them in groups, so we can't save any time there. It's one-on-one or nothing. It's one-on-one or whole class. It's the hardest teaching I've ever done. It's all I can do is get to one-on-one to those kids for 5 minutes a day, 4 to 5 times to try to get them caught up as fast as I can. Online works. I mean, I've got games online that works to extent. It's not near as good as person to person. We do have a literacy aid now that we're channeling kids in one at a time. I'm still doing Title I. I am overloaded in Title I because so many kids met the qualifications this year. And I just got another one. And I can't get any more Title I kids in. So we got Title I, we got literacy, and we're doing the best we can if we have an aide in our classroom to get to those kids. Can we do it hard enough, fast enough to get them caught up? I don't know in 1 year. I don't know. I am so concerned about those kids, as every teacher, probably K to 6 is.
Can I add to what she said? But no matter what, preschool through 12th grade, it's that management that makes all the difference. And so if you have a parent coming in that's just helping out to help out, they have to have those management skills, or it doesn't matter who's in there. And that's just what Marietta said. It doesn't matter.
I'd almost like to have a school Zoom channel on our webpage where you could tell all our patrons what you just told us, so they would
Thank you.
understand it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, because I didn't even think about some of the things you said until you said them. It's really
My easiest way to teach, and I had to do it completely different, and I had to experiment, is the only option that works is if I email parents in very succinct steps. That means I'm down to a third of my instruction for the day already. So if I take a third and I put it in very succinct things, I attach a worksheet and I did some links, that was my best hope of getting a child any education. Now, is it going to get better if I send an iPad home? Well, not unless you turn the iPad on for little Johnny, not unless you help him get to the right icon, and it's not going to work unless Johnny can get his password in there and a number. There's no way that we can teach K to 3 without a parent doing it at that end. It's impossible. You just can't.
Yeah.
So then you put all that back right on a parent.
I do think, and I'll say, like, in our plan still from the very beginning, it's something that I don't think we missed on. I think it's something that was really good set in. We have in our red that we would still consider, even in that red, that we have a priority groups. K3 pre-readers or early readers is the top priority group, along with special education, and then, special education students, and then followed by, junior high schoolers that are kind of at-risk kiddos for dropout, losing them out of the system. You add all those and you're maybe at 33% of school capacity, and some could be online. But I agree with Marietta. It is going to be awfully hard to do online with K3 if we had to get to that point. And I think even in our red plan, we prioritize that a shutdown might not be a whole school shutdown, but a shutdown, shutdown is not the right word. A move to online learning might the K3 might be protected from that. But on the other end, and I had Marietta come in to talk, and Melanie's running a virtual Knowledge Bowl right now. I was going to have her as well. But on the other end, there are serious concerns in the high school, like with athletics and with students' mental health. And yes, they're able to log in and they're able to do some homework, but is it that really what's best for kids? We're trying to prepare. I mean, their next step is college or career, and they're being set back by that too. So I think it all reiterates the importance of being here. You wish you could magically control all the stuff that's happening outside of the building. You can't. It's impossible. And that's one area where you have to react instead of being proactive. You can't control that, but it's important.
Any other comments on next step kind of considerations? Do you have anything else, Mr. Gates, on that?
Nope, that's it. I just have displayed for the board those two kind of main goals that were in our plan from the very beginning, stuff that I've been repeating. And I don't consider them to be one and then two. They're just co-equal goals in that plan, and that is to keep kids in person and to keep students, staff, and community safe. That the other piece with that spread is I think if you ever got to the point where the school was driving spread in the community, that's when you might consider a pause as well. But that's it, and I appreciate the guidance on that. I don't think it takes an action.
I'm just saying, I mean, based on our plan as we have it in the discussion we had tonight, I mean, if you decide you've got to make some big decision, give us a heads up, and
Mhm.
if we have some big strong reason why we don't think you should, we'll say it, and you'll consider it, and you'll make your decision that's best for everybody.
I think that our community is really supportive of the schools. It's obvious in their comments and of the board. I really appreciated that.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I think that even though we're doing pretty good with the community, I think we could do better. I think the community could support the schools by, doing the things we're trying to do in school in the community a little bit more, myself included, And I don't know how to get that message out. Of course, you can see in the comments, you're not going to reach everybody, no matter what. But anyway, I think that so far it's been a pretty good.
Mhm.
I think people have made some tough decisions,
Yep.
and they've done what they needed to do.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I guess we'll move on to the something we have some guidelines on, although they're not pleasant. And we have some questions as well, but you have the governor's task force or the governor's requirements, and then a plan for athletics for the gym.
So I guess if you don't mind if I
Please.
lead a little, okay. So the first thing I want to emphasize, because there's been some confusion with the governor's order. Starting early in June, we began transitioning as a state from what was stage 1, was where we were at in June, to a stage 4. The governor did that on a 2-week rolling basis. So actually it started in May. By the end of June, we were basically back to stage 4, which was very limited in its restrictions. That maintained from the end of June until about a month ago, when the governor moved us backwards into stage 3. Stage 3 was it was available on the website, actually still is available on the rebound.idaho.gov. It placed restrictions in terms of schools. It did not place any restrictions on operating school. So we could have as many people in here if we're doing educational work as we need to. But it was very specific in limitations to extracurricular activities, sporting events, band, etc. And what the stage 3 order did, which was not actually like the stage 3 from back in May, but it was a modified stage 3, is it capped attendance at extracurricular events to 50 people, not including participants, which were spelled out clearly in that document as players, coaches, the personnel required like clock keepers and statisticians, and officials. Those were what was listed, delineated out in that document. Other than those people who did not count for the total count, there was a 50-person limit. And that stage 3 order also had a second clause in it that said that people, entities could request for an exemption or a waiver in circumstances when they wanted to go over that 50 cap. Our region of schools decided as a group to make a District 2 request to raise that cap to 60, which would have allowed for 30 home fans and 30 away fans. And we had a plan for how we were going to hand out those tickets. Well, a couple of weeks ago, that changed. And our exemption was approved, actually, by the public health district. That changed when the governor rolled back to stage 2. When that happened, there's a new order. It's slightly shorter than the modified stage 3, and it's a modified stage 2. It set the cap in attendance. It still kept that clause about extracurricular activities. Still the same thing with statisticians, players, etc. The other thing that got struck from that is that there is no waiver or exemption process to that. If it is not an education school, then it falls under this gatherings of 10, but again, not counting the essential players and participants. So the waiver part is gone. There is no public health district waiver for larger groups. That has led to some confusion, because if you look at the old document, it says, that's still up on their website, it says you can request a waiver. The new document does not. I had heard a few people mention that perhaps they'd visited with the governor's office and that there is the potential for a waiver. I reached out when I heard that to Ty Jones, who's the director of the IHSAA, and asked him what was happening in schools, and is that the case, that some schools can get a waiver. He said in no uncertain terms, no, there is no waiver. He did say that there are districts, particularly in the southeastern part of Idaho, that are, I guess, I don't know, thumbing their nose or whatever other term you want to say at that governor's order, and are allowing larger groups than 10 into their athletic events. But there's no specific waiver. I also reached out to Greg Wilson, who's the governor's education director, today, and via text, he also said that there is absolutely no exemption to it. It is a 10-person cap, not counting participants. So that clarity from the top as far as other things that we can do. So with that said, the plan.
End date?
Is there what?
End date.
There is. I don't think there's an end date on it. It says until he. I'll have to look. I need to make sure. Until he issues a proclamation that it's not.
I think it says his order says, no, it's in effect until they rescind.
No, yeah, until he rescinds it. He rescinded the stage 3 and then enacted the stage 2, and it's the same.
It'll continue in effect until it's extended in writing.
So with that in mind, as a superintendent, it would not be my recommendation to not follow the governor's order. I think that is dangerous. I think it opens up liability. I think there's all sorts of issues with that. And I think it sends the wrong statement. That's my personal opinion, and I'm gonna stick to that. What I would propose then for our 10, there's a mix across the district. Right now, more than half of the schools in our district are not allowing any fans. The reason why they're doing that is they want to leave space for visiting teams where if the boys and girls come and the girls are playing, the boys are non-participants. So they're trying to leave space for those non-participants to sit so they're not out sitting on the bus or somewhere else. I think it's most important to get parents into these games with those 10 rather than some other team's boys team. If there is a visiting team, I would propose that we do put them somewhere else. We put them in the multi-purpose room. They can watch a live stream of the game and they can space out accordingly in the multi-purpose room. It would add a little bit of disinfecting, but if we don't do concessions, that there's a trade-off there. What I would propose is that we admit 10 fans per game for 2 nights, a boys' night and a girls' night. We would prioritize senior parents specifically to have a senior night. So on those nights, we would allow each of the senior parents to bring as many people as we could fit to under that 10. Right now we have 5 senior girls, 3 senior boys. So on those nights, the senior girls would have 2 parent tickets or 2 tickets. The senior boys would have 3. Other than that, in future games, besides that senior night, every player, regardless of their grade level, would receive 1 ticket. We have class or group sizes under 10. You could use that ticket however you wanted. It wouldn't have to be a parent, but it certainly would likely be a parent. A player that plays both ways, just to balance the numbers, if you played varsity and JV, we would just say 1 ticket for one of those 2 games, whichever one the coach kind of determines is the one you're going to play in the most, to keep it under 10. We would not allow any visiting fans. We did get guidance from the governor's office that their bus driver would count as an essential person. So the bus drivers will still be inside. Our bus driver will be allowed to go into a game as well. You'd have that 1 ticket. You'd come in, you'd sit down socially distanced. You'd have to still wear a mask. Fans after each game would leave. We would clean, and then we would admit the next 10 in. So there'd be a JV girls 10, a varsity girls 10, and right now we only have 1 boys team, so there would be a boys 10 as well. A total of 30 different people are at least unique for that game. There's, some parents that have a kid, 2 kids playing. They would get a ticket for each kid. Some people might not say that's fair. I just think that's the way it is. Each kid gets a ticket. The same with, there might be a parent who has a boy and a girl. So they might get a ticket. We're also looking at, I visited with Tim about having the boys coach drive them or down to a game, right now we play a lot of quads or tries, I guess is what they are, and to kind of space out on the bus a little bit better. We would reduce managers to 0 for away games, become managers, as opposed to actually bringing junior high managers. Games, we would not allow the girls to come in and watch the boys. They'd have to watch it online, but they wouldn't be allowed into the gym. I know with all of these things, I ask myself these questions all the time. Right now I shouldn't even, you can go to a restaurant or a bar or Walmart or the Only Store or anywhere right now, and because it's a business, it doesn't have the 10 cap. And I struggle with it all the time. And all of these rules that are kind of pushed down from the top, it's like you can find these holes in it. Like the gym's a huge space. Why can't we fit more than 10? But it is what it is. And I think we're lucky to have the kids continue to play. I think it's a good thing. And I hope we can kind of continue it. I want to follow that guidance. And I think this is a fair way to do it as well.
I know in Washington, stores they're supposed to have 25% of capacity in at a time. My brother-in-law works in a store, and he said they hardly ever have
Right.
400 is their capacity of shoppers, and they hardly ever have 25% of capacity of shoppers, so they don't even monitor.
It's not even a thing they monitor.
That capacity was sent prior to the
Yeah.
pandemic, that's by health standard,
Yeah.
like
Fire code.
fire codes and things, space like that, yeah, Quinn knows all about that stuff, so, it's just we're a society of rules,
Yeah.
and we've adapted these rules to try and fit the situation, but they're not gonna be perfect.
They're not
for
sure. Yeah.
So thank you for this and comments from our discussion on this.
I would say, thanks for the work on this, Sean, but, saying one ticket to each player, because now, either your dad or your mom can go.
Mhm.
In all actuality, I don't see why we couldn't. Yeah, we'd possibly be over the 10. You have the girls team broke up 8 and 8.
Yeah.
Give each of those players 2. How many are actually going to bring 2?
Yeah.
Think of several parents that are single parents.
Sure.
And even if you give each of them 2, we're talking 16 over the 10. We're not even hardly thumbing our nose at the governor at that. And I don't foresee that we're even going to hit that 16 mark in most games.
Yeah.
So
what
I would recommend is just go ahead and give each player 2 tickets so both parents can come, rather than trying to pick which parent gets to come to your game. And just like the rodeo arena down there, signs on the gate that say enter and use at your own risk. That waives the county of liability if someone gets hurt in there, horses catch disease in there. Put the signs on the door, enter at your own risk. And that gym is by far big enough. If you put 16 people in there,
6 feet apart.
well, and technically, because 2 of them came from the same household, you still only got 8 different spots. And I think that would
I'm guessing we have pretty good attendance because there will not be an option for I'm guessing that there's that nobody will be able to go to away games. So there's going to be more pressure to come to the 8, 9, 10 home games that we have. But yeah.
Well, if you say anyone can use those tickets, they could be given them to another student or whoever, so
Correct.
they would probably be getting.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Like if they couldn't come, they might give it to someone else.
I see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense what you think, but then.
But even that, we're still talking if it's only.
Another thought would be to keep the 10 cap and say, but then you get into like first come, first serve and trying to police that. Like you say, well, everybody's got 1, but then the last 2 are open if you're at the door and ready to come in. That gets tough too, because then you got 10 people piled up at the door ready to come in. And
any way to divide the gym into 2 sections so that you could be able to do that, have certain people come from the back door and.
Yeah, we have one meeting on one side of the gym, another meeting on there.
There's a basketball game over here and a basketball game. Yeah, probably a brick wall right down the middle would be enough to do that. But
they're different games. That one's the left game, this one's the right game.
Yeah.
What about how he talked about giving, some parents have done this or, suggested to give different people jobs.
Yeah.
That would.
It's a possibility. I visited with, Callie about that. There are some jobs that, you don't want to just make up jobs. One thing she mentioned is as part of the protocols, there's cleaning the ball regularly. That's a job that you could assign to a parent, or if a parent wanted to volunteer, we'll probably have more volunteers than ever to do that job. Then they could, basically not get an extra ticket, but allowed into the game. There's a few others. There's no concessions. There's no gate with just 10 people. There's the statistician, which could be assigned to a parent. It's not an easy job, especially, it's easier to do at in a youth sports game or junior high, but in high school, it gets a little bit more intense to make sure that it's accurate. And the people that we've had volunteer for a long time do a really good job of it. And it's the same thing with the clock. I guess I've been a basketball official with a first-time clock operator, and it can make for a mess of a game if they're not following, not able to operate the clock very well. But it certainly is a possibility to get a few more people in there and to prioritize parents in those cases when they're needed. I don't know about any other. I mean, we don't have a janitor on duty when they're there. We could certainly, because of the cleaning requirements, if there was a parent that wanted to do those janitor duties, there's the potential that we could count that as one as well. It gets kind of tricky too, and then you're also making judgments about, I don't think with a clock or a scorekeeper, you're going to want to have a new person there every time. Perhaps if there's a parent that wants to do that and wants to learn and become better at it, then it might be worth it right now early in the season. But then how do you pick that person
Right.
too?
You get your ticket for free and go sit and just relax and watch the game, but you gotta work for your.
Right, yeah. I don't know. But those are possibilities. I mean, thinking outside the box like that and using those staff members for essential positions. I suppose you could do the 2 tickets, and then if you're number 11, you're doing something. You're spraying down in between quarters, or you're wiping down balls, or we have to have you be an essential staff, so you better not show up late.
Well, if our priority is parents, and we did the 2-ticket deal,
But it could only go to.
then it could only be parents. That'd be one way of doing it. You couldn't just give them away to kids or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it's doing something.
Oh, that's my shut up, quit talking, Sean message.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like, maybe just parents. That does take away from some flexibility of, grandma and grandpa wants to watch one last game, or an aunt or uncle or something like that.
Or you could say, you have 1 ticket to each player, and then if the player's parents request an additional ticket for another parent, we could issue that, something like that. Because we don't, based on the idea, we're not sure they're all gonna come, so we just have a little bumper,
Yeah.
and we could give them a job, like, I don't know, filling water bottles.
You don't, yeah, certainly. There's those possibilities, and keeping stats, filling water, doing management duties.
I think Quint's got a good idea. I'm just trying to think of a way
To make it so that you feel comfortable.
I don't think we
I was
want
gonna say, the extras are masked Nazis.
Yeah. Mask Nazis.
Protocol.
Yeah, that's our compliance protocol person. There are some ways to do that. I don't want a perception, because you get nervous, like if some of these school districts are just saying, if you want to show up, show up. And I've heard of some others not in Region 2, but fairly nearby that are going to maybe say that. You get into a potential power play where a governor could say, you don't get it. I'm trying to make this work, and we're in the middle of a pandemic or crisis. And if people are just going to follow the rules, then we're done. There is that potential. I don't know. I don't want to get into that. I want these kids to stay playing.
I think we should follow the rules. I'm just trying to think of a way that we can accommodate as many parents as possible and still follow the rules.
Yeah.
I heard these guys at the school board convention talking, these Southern Idaho, I'm not blaming Southern Idaho, but I mean, it was like, the heck with whatever the governor says, we're gonna do what we want, and it's just like, yeah, okay, that's teamwork there.
Yeah. No, there could be two if you bring parents, 1 if it's not a parent per student. I mean, there could be something like that to restrict that, so there's still some flexibility. I think there's probably enough jobs that if we got to that say 16 would be the number, I think, from the, I put those numbers in, I can't, did I put it on there? So boys have 9, that's a little bit, so you'd be, your max would be about 18.
Make an official laminated badge, you know, if it's
Yeah.
someone has to be the water bottle person that night.
That would be their duty. I do think you're probably in 18's probably stretch a little. I mean, I'm really hesitant about the clock and the bookkeeper because I know these games are important and that takes some expertise. Again, probably if I had a parent that wanted to commit to it right now and get good at it, I might consider it, but perhaps there's enough space. I mean, you're probably not going to get the full 18. Like, I mean, even in those cases, you do have some single, maybe
Like
just one
Ken said,
parent.
and you have a better idea on the boys, are they all 2-parent families or?
Yeah, it's mixed. I mean, if we did give 2 tickets, you're probably going to get 2 people.
You're gonna
Yeah.
get 2, or just do, but like Ken said, that you can have up to 2 tickets for parents.
For parents. And parents only? Or that if you wanted to use it for someone else, it would be just the one item or,
If you want to use it for something else, it's your single ticket.
you know.
Yeah, if you get one, I think each kid gets a ticket. And they can have grandpa or dad or mom there. But if the parent
Could request.
requests a second parent ticket, not, it's gotta be for a
Okay.
parent. You know, then you actually know, well, pretty close who's gonna come,
Yeah.
and we can kind of plan for what we have to do to accommodate that. I don't know.
I think, so a system where there's one parent ticket and that if you email a request by a certain time, I mean, this is gonna be a little bit of a nightmare to kind of, between me and Callie or Jackie to kind of keep track of it, but you know, if you email or fill out a form by a certain time that you could request a second ticket, and then we would notify you, you know, whether or not we had either a position for that, or if it was approved.
Need to make a no scalping rule too.
Yeah, you can't sell your tickets. Yeah, no scalping.
Well, if it's a parent ticket, the second one would be a
A
parent ticket.
parent ticket.
The first one is a choice ticket, the second one's a parent ticket. And it would
If
be
you, yeah,
for a second parent, right?
for a
That's what we're
second
saying.
parent ticket. Yeah, you'd have to call it a second parent
Second
ticket.
parent ticket. If grandpa's coming, then you don't
You
get a
just get the
parent
one.
ticket.
You just get the one.
Yeah. Oh boy, that gets deep, doesn't it? I don't know.
It's doable. There's just logistics to it.
Things
And
we
then,
took for granted.
yeah. And then you have to, you know, think about if someone gets there and then is upset that they don't get to come in and,
Yeah,
or they're,
people
no,
who
I'm
don't even know
I'm
or
sitting
whatever.
here. I'm not
Yeah.
moving. They don't know the rules or, I mean, we have to communicate that
So
out.
that's almost where to keep it simpler is just say 2 each and no applying for, I mean, each kid gets 2 tickets and yeah, you're pushing it up to boys games, you could see 18. But it's not, I still look at it as, it's still only 9 groups trying to social distance in each other.
You know.
Sean, are there really only 9 boys?
Yeah,
I'm getting different information.
that's what I got from our AD. It's a little dated.
I have 11.
High school boys?
That's,
No.
I don't know. I mean, does it matter? I mean, you have that many girls, so I mean, it's the same conversation.
Yeah.
Trying to figure it out.
Well, I guess I'll have to reach out and see if my number's
And
accurate.
then to muddy the water some more, junior high.
Yeah. Junior high is done with their home games. They played them early.
What about
Volleyball.
girls volleyball? starting up?
Volleyball will come up, and I don't have numbers for that, but they're likely, it's popular with the girls, will be enough for 2 full teams. And I would guess we basically manage that the same. I don't have a count yet, but you're probably, less than 20 total girls, probably. Well, no, probably 20 girls playing volleyball between 2 teams is about 10 a team.
How about if we, I don't really really like breaking the rules on purpose kind of deal. How about if we issued each player a ticket? And that can be a ticket for a parent or a grandparent, or it could be a ticket for 2 parents. And then when they get there, we don't know exactly how many are going to come, but when they get there, if there's 5 extra parents there, we give them a job.
Good job.
5, whatever. And if there's 18 there, we cringe, but we play the game.
We give them a job.
But most of the time, I don't think it's going to be a problem. And then there's not a bunch of calling or anything like that.
I like that.
The ticket is for a parent or a grandparent or whoever,
Or 2 parents.
or 2 parents. And if 2 parents, and then we kind of adjust when we get there.
I think that sounds reasonable. And I
We're not
think
intentionally,
it gives us enough that I can have jobs between janitorial, the ball sanitation, and then other management type duties that we could make it work. There's also a few, I'm thinking like, I just thought of myself and, you can have like Melanie can be there to take pictures, for example, for the yearbook. And I am there as an administrator. Callie is the same way. I'm sure there's others right now that have specific duties that would be considered essential.
Could be
And
mentioned, a school nurse could be there.
that would take off.
That's a parent. that
Sure.
takes one.
Yep, that you could take those off add them to the essential list, and that helps with. So we might be even looking at less than what we're thinking. I would say at this point that seems like a reasonable thing, and I think we have enough duties so that I don't feel like we're breaking any rules. We're just being smart about
I'm
it.
sure you're gonna get all sorts of suggestions now. For special jobs.
We could have like 20 assistant coaches.
Yeah. I think,
That seems reasonable to me.
It'll at least keep the parents happy. I mean, that's the main thing. I mean, it'd be nice to be able to keep all the.
okay, any other comments on the proposal? So we just amended the 1 ticket for each kid. The ticket is good for a parent or 2 parents or another person.
And we have games tomorrow. I will communicate that out via email to all high school and junior high parents tonight. I'll send something out with those guidelines.
Need a motion for this?
I think since we met, you might as well make a motion and get something done tonight.
I move to accept the amended band attendance plan.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay,
Thanks, Marietta.
Polly and Sandy, Quinn moved. Carrie seconded the motion to amend the plan as we discussed. Any discussion?
nope.
Seeing none, we'll vote. Anybody opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay, that passes unanimous. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you,
Second.
Carrie. Polly
Polly.
seconded that. Any discussion? Seeing none, anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Thank you very much. Have a good evening. And our regular meeting is in 2 weeks from
2 weeks.
tonight.
2 weeks from tonight.
This is the 30th.
Thanks, Marietta, for coming. Did she leave already?
That she left. I will pass that.
Okay. Thanks, Marcy.